powerful advertising solutions across television, digital, and social media platforms, and help brands tell their story. If you have strong communication skills, a passion for sales, and the drive to succeed, join WESN today. Send your CV to marketing@wsncc.com or WhatsApp 6861662 and start building your future.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins Real Estate Agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way, or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
WESN.
I'm Sean Michaels. Welcome back to Talking Point. And the news from the weekend is interesting. Now, I will do my best. I have reasons for not venturing into certain aspects of the whole topic that led to the PNM walkout. Not necessarily for reasons that you might initially think. And it's difficult for me to explain or not explain them because I am attempting not to, in my own small corner of the narrative, cause any effects. Let's put it that way. However, we'll have to some extent weigh into that. I think more to do with regards to how Parliament is conducting its business. And I would argue you could necessarily put blame across the board and look at the institution of our Parliament as a whole. I know most people would be tempted to do it as a one side versus the other side, one side right, other side wrong. It has caused a lot of subtopics in the political debates, particularly potentially with regards to political ethics, to once again be brought to the fore. But are they merely just convenient political fodder for the moment, or is it a serious engagement in serious ethical considerations? I'm not entirely sure. The one thing that I will say right now, and I'll get into this maybe a little bit more later, is that it's very interesting how very few parliamentarians suffer any kind of consequences. Very few. And this issue has escalated to this point. This one issue surrounding a junior parliamentarian has escalated to this point. It seems as though certain people are untouchable, not just because of who backs them, but also who seems to be afraid or incapable of doing anything about it from the other side. But let me stick a pin in that, hold a pause there. Hopefully we'll have our media ambassador today, but no guarantees because, again, unfortunately, last week and into today, he has other duties. So we'll see if his schedule allows. If it does, he should be joining us via Zoom. Now, speaking about the police, there's an interesting headline in at least one of today's papers. And that is, and I got wind of this, but I didn't follow the story. Essentially, public appreciation for police action, which led to 4 suspects being shot dead. Now, it is not entirely clear how the police were informed of the situation, but it seems as though once they got the intelligence or the information that a home invasion happened, they deployed assets and were able to intercept the suspects. Now, according to one report, 3 suspects were initially shot and killed, a 4th suspect was later shot and killed, and 2 suspects were arrested, and I think there were 8 in total, so there are 2 more men that might be at large. Now, one of the things that came up with this whole situation is the use of body cameras. This is from former Commissioner Griffith, which this is one of those interesting moments in the debate, because I do think there is some amount of positive sentiment in the public. There's also reports from criminologists and the like who praise that's literally headline, praise for the police action. And this is one of those things now where this goes beyond the technicalities of crime fighting, one could argue. Because at the end of the day, yes, I understand that they're criminals, but we tend to have a very inconsistent point of view or narrative with regards to how we view criminality. Because on one hand, people will say, oh gosh, man, they don't defend the criminals. They want to engage in crime. The police shoot them, that's all right. It is predicated on the assumption that the use of force policy was adhered to, and the shootings were justified, right? And usually in the past, I would be willing to give the police benefit of the doubt. I have a hard time doing so 100% right now. This is going to be an interesting situation because I do feel there are going to be members of the public who are not going to have an issue with this story, even if they don't have any evidence to ensure that everything was above board. Even if there will be some people that come out to say it didn't go down like how the police said it went down, right? Because again, this was done while a large group of, I assume, young men were conducting right now what is one of the more common serious crimes that is perpetrated on the population. So there is a certain amount of, dare I say, requirement for a strong response to things like home invasion. But let's not forget the fact that we also had a narrative of people having issue with foreigners being killed by the Americans. Now, the difference is we were a bit more certain that that situation was not necessary, right? I have a hard time seeing how it was necessary to shoot the boats. Now, it could be that they have very specific policies that were born from very specific situations that had very specific issues that they want to avoid, and they're saying, our guys, it does not, their lives are more important than the risks of allowing X, Y, and Z, so we're just going to circumvent that and drop missiles on them from the sky. But I bring that up to point out that on some level, the same public sentiment, which may or may not include the exact same subset of people in our population, but generally speaking, very generally speaking, the public sentiment locally is, don't cry for the criminals, don't defend the criminals. They want to engage in criminality, the police shoot them, it's okay. That's, you might not say it that way, but that's essentially how it comes across. Meanwhile, oh my gosh, look at what those Americans did. Now, here's the rub. While it's very difficult to say that what the Americans did was absolutely necessary, it is also very difficult to say that all or the majority of those individuals were innocent. That doesn't mean, again, that they did anything to warrant being fired upon with weapons that were lethal force in the moment, right? That's a whole other separate debate. You can be a criminal and have a situation where your death is not justified. That is possible. So on one hand, we seem to judge the possibility, when the Americans do it, unfavorably as a people. Uncle Sam, our government has not said this, and I'm just pointing to the public narrative. But on the other hand, we seem to be not so compassionate to our own people. Well, except when Uncle Sam bombs our own people, and then all of a sudden, at least for a day, it's a controversy. But no, we could kill our own people, that's fine. And I'm not saying the police were wrong in this moment, but what I am saying is, I doubt we're going to get the evidence to know for sure all of the details of what happened. We're going to have to give the police the benefit of the doubt, and that might be hard for some people right now. In part because the Commissioner and the Minister of Homeland Security seemingly deem it not a priority. But it will be interesting because we like the results. I believe a lot of the population are going to be more than willing to turn a blind eye to the problem. And that, in my mind, is ironically part of the problem. Because we are not necessarily willing to deal with the situation properly. Because saying it's okay for the police to shoot the criminals on the scene, that's taking shortcuts. When warranted, they don't have a choice. But we're taking shortcuts either because the circumstances of the shooting might be questionable, or, and this is where I believe it's more applicable in this case, you're taking shortcuts because you're not actually dealing with all of the contingencies in order to ensure that everything is above board while conducting yourself with as much transparency as possible. Because that's what the lack of body cameras are. That's the laziness in this approach. The inability and the lack of appreciation for doing things with the level of gravitas that they require. Because we're not talking about throwing away old documents, and we're not talking about getting coffee for everybody else in the office. We're talking about things like the monopoly, the state monopoly of lethal force, and the grave responsibility that comes with it. And something as simple and limited as a lack of body cameras, among other things, sends the wrong message to the population. Sends the message that we're going to police the country like the Wild West. And it's not always the most effective way to do it unless you want some type of oppressive state. We're not policing people by encouraging them to not break the law. We're policing people by essentially blackmailing them. Don't run afoul of the law or else your rights might not be what it usually is, given the fact that in the moment there won't necessarily be that much evidence to be used in order to trace exactly the chain of events of what happened. And it doesn't matter if that's the intention of the police or not. I'm not saying that's their intention. Some might. I'm saying, again, you open that door. And it doesn't help that there are a lot of questionable circumstances and a lack of trust already. And that lack of trust, to some extent, is what's going to limit any sort of positive win this situation can have. Now, the situation with the kidnapping, I believe most of the suspects were arrested. So there's no question with regards to, oh my gosh, the police use too much lethal force. But in this case, several men were killed. And I'm not saying that it's not justified. What I'm saying is, at a time when trust and confidence is low, you limit questionable situations by having body cameras. You might think, what's the point? We know that the shooting is above board. Why can't you trust us? Because there have been too many negative stories, too many controversies. You put the things in place, even if it's not necessary, even if you don't actually have to fight the chain of events in a court of law. You put those things in place because you could then bank the goodwill with the public. And then in the rare occasion where the circumstances are difficult to prove, then you can say our track record is so strong, please give us the benefit of the doubt. And for the most part, the public would. Now, one of the things is the commissioner has been reported to have said, I want to pull up the quote, I don't want to misquote him. With regards to this type of crime, it demonstrates that criminals would no longer be allowed to act with impunity. The police response. I mean, which is true on some level, and this is to some extent the sad part. Is the praise for the police in this situation not so much of, oh, well done, good job, but more like, oh, I didn't think you had it in you. We usually don't see this sort of action. We are pleasantly surprised. We are impressed because this is not the norm. Now, granted, we cannot expect that 100% of the time this is going to be the result. That is unreasonable, right? There's always going to be varying degrees of circumstances and opportunity for the police to respond and get such an effective result, whether it is suspects like engage in a gunfight or they just surrender on the spot. The result is police interdicted the alleged criminals and did not allow them to escape. You can't guarantee a result like that 100% of the time. So let's just mention that, get that off the table. But we are not accustomed to having a high degree of detection rates and arrests. We're just not. So, ironically, this is not the time to the officers who conducted the operation. Well done. This is not the time for the service to pat itself on the back. The officers involved could potentially pat themselves on the back. But the service, this is merely but one step on the way for both the rehabilitation of its image. In this case, not so much about trust and confidence in terms of all of the things that I mentioned before, but merely with regards to trust and confidence in the sense of, can you be, as a police service, consistent? Can you be, as a police service, reliable? Can you be, as a police service, an institution with reasonable expectations to get positive outcomes, which is to say, not 100% perfect all the time, but at least we will have reasonable expectations that we can in any given circumstances. Because one interdiction commissioner means nothing. They hung Joel Chady. Did that stop drug smuggling? Yeah, they've gotten gangsters before. Did that stop gangsters? Gangsters have died in shootouts before. Drugs have been interdicted before. Did that stop drug smuggling? One interdiction means squat. All it does, guaranteed, it stops those criminals for as long as they are incarcerated or if they are killed while trying to evade capture. That's all it guarantees. One incident does not send a message. Or, I get it, he has to say that publicly, he's trying to milk it for what it's worth, and not for the PR. He's trying to milk it with regards to showing a strong front for the criminals so that they second guess committing these types of endeavors. I get that. However, I would hazard a guess that for most criminals, they probably, for the most part, are not dissuaded in the slightest, because again, they are not unaccustomed to seeing one or two or three or a crew of their profession being interdicted by the police. They're accustomed also. They're not unaccustomed to that. They're also not unaccustomed for the vast majority of criminality to continue relatively unfettered. Now, the PDOs have maybe cut into that a little bit, but the PDOs are not an indefinite solution. Consistency, reliability, regular positive results, some degree of certainty. That's what's going to dissuade criminals, because that means if I go and do this criminal act, I have a higher than 50% chance of getting caught. Now the math is a lot different. It's a lot different because we lived in a country. I'm not sure if you could say we still live in this country. Maybe we do. Murder rate is down, but notice they haven't said anything about, I haven't read anything about murder detection rate in a while. But we live in a country where essentially 8 out of 10, if not 9 out of 10 murderers went unknown, got away, as my interpretation of the data goes, scot-free. Scot-free. Now the state university might have changed that equation a little bit, but again, like PDOs, that is not an indefinite solution. So, officers involved, pat yourselves on the back. Commissioner, this is but one step. Now granted, this is not the first, I didn't say it was the first step. We've already had the first step, and we had a series of steps. But this is not the kind of problem where step 1, solve a crime, step 2, interdict a crime, step 3, profit, work's over, problem solved. No. And as much as you might think has been accomplished since December 30th, 2024, before the commissioner was even the commissioner, and for that year and a half period almost where we're coming up to since then, this is now May, so year and a third, the positive effects, as much as you might say, oh, look how much good was done. Yes, that's true, but the problem isn't solved. 1, the murder rate is still too high, technically. And 2, we don't know for sure, and there's technically nothing to suggest that the level of murders in this country will remain. There's nothing to suggest that. Maybe there is something that should suggest it to us. They haven't told us what it is. And unfortunately, the media has not been able to uncover it. And if the media did, I'm sure the police service would complain. But in part, again, I understand you want to not reveal all the secret sauce to policing and police operations and blah, 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 blah. But do not complain that your lack of transparency, leaving the public in the dark, then leaves the public with a bad taste in their mouth because they don't know what's going on. And again, you don't get the benefit of the doubt anymore because of the track record. What track record? 1 squad, 1 song. We could start there and work our way outwards. Doesn't have to be many, just has to be a few. But if you want to deal with it quietly in the shadows of private doors, then that's a you problem. If you don't understand why the public doesn't understand things that they don't know, well, that's a you problem. That's not the public's problem. If we don't know it, how are we supposed to understand it? But again, yes, one of the reports is that there's community support for the situation, and understandably so. At the very least, this community, I think, one could argue, this positive result, successful result, will hopefully send a message, hey, we were able to catch so-and-so that tried to do this in this community, which means the conditions and the circumstances around this community, at the very least, you all need to be a little bit wary before you all just wheel back and come again. The problem is, to what extent will it extend beyond one community? But, again, I have no issue with the residents. And even to some extent, the rest of the country showing appreciation for positive result. Just keep expectations realistic post-positive result. Now, if the police string together more positive results, well, then, hey, now we start on a trend. And a trend then suggests what it is that I wanted to see in the first place. You get some consistency, some regularity. All of a sudden, the criminals have different math in their heads to do. Now, because one of the things that came out during this whole, all of the recent issues with regards to crime is what's going on with the prison system. Now, ironically, the association president is saying one of the issues are overcrowding. And to be honest, that might be more detrimental than we civilians might think. But there are a lot of issues with the prison system. The report is in The Guardian. Some of it, you know, technically has been said before, like outdated infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. But I think also just how the poor prison system, the overworked prison system has been compromised. And essentially, when you have a situation that isn't functioning properly, you can expect issues. And these issues are undermining the law enforcement criminal justice system. And ironically, it might be a self-feeding loop. The unhealthy system, which in part, there are delays with criminal matters, causing people to stay on remand and stay in prisons for far too long, and then the more people you technically arrest, then potentially the more people now that are adding to the problem of overcrowding and adding to the delays, which then leads to when more people are potentially arrested, you get more delays on top of all of the other issues, right? And this also means that we have a catch-22 situation when it comes to criminals. Yes, they don't want to be caught, right? Nobody wants to be locked up by choice. Nobody technically wants to die by choice. But on some level, psychologically, now we have to ask ourselves, do criminals in TNT, how much is incarceration a major issue for them? And as has been discussed in other jurisdictions, there is something to be said about taking all of your criminals and squeezing them together and then expecting them not to somehow end up being turned into career or lifetime criminals. When you're putting them in an environment of people, I don't want to say like-minded people, because that then makes it sound as though I'm saying they are inherently criminals, they are inherently evil. But rather, people in similar circumstances with varying degrees of personal morality, right? And we don't necessarily want to say that everybody's born evil. And I don't think that's the case. But if you have been subject to various circumstances that have influenced you negatively, and then you are grouped in with a set of people who have had similar, if maybe different details, maybe different circumstances, but similar enough that you get a similar effect, and we group all of them together, so the mentality, the perspective, the mindset, the motivation, the culture that they find themselves in, whether reluctantly or with both eyes open, diving in head first. Now you have a large congregation of people all in that space. Yeah, there are some people that question in America, hey, maybe that's what's causing criminals. If they weren't going to be career criminals before, they definitely will be now, because that's the environment that we're leaving them in, that we're inflicting upon them. As opposed to, well, you did something wrong, go reflect on your actions, do the work, rehabilitate yourself. But when you kind of put all of them into just one big compound to stew amongst themselves, to be isolated and cut off from the rest of society, but to share their experiences, their circumstances, to kind of have a positive feedback loop or a negative feedback loop of a worldview that is negative. As the association president says, the remand culture undermines everything. Many inmates do not access programs because they're not serving a sentence. They are simply waiting, some for years. This is one of those catch-22s where they're on remand, so they can't access certain things. They can't progress in certain ways. Their whole prison time is up in the air until their court matter is heard and successfully resolved, right? And on some level, it undermines things. I don't know if the association president said it, but part of how it undermines things is how the prison system can treat prisoners on remand is different to convicted criminals. And it turns everything into a mess. So, the question is, are there innovative solutions to this that doesn't require significant capital that we don't have? That's number one. And then number two, are there solutions that require capital, but we have the capacity and, assuming we have good leadership that can properly explain the situation, potentially have our population willing to sacrifice enough for measures that don't necessarily require 2 arms and a leg, maybe just 1 arm or 1 leg, rhetorically speaking. That's how much it would cost, but who knows? The population might be, if it is explained to them properly, willing to sacrifice whatever that is in terms of public spend. And if you have good analysis, you potentially could estimate investing in improvements in the criminal justice system could potentially allow the private sector more freedom to operate, could then potentially allow GDP to grow ever so slightly, which could then potentially allow tax revenue to go up without actually having to increase taxes. But I mean, you know, what do I know? I didn't just win an election by default because the other guy was so unpopular and then let that go to my head. Now, one of the things that I think is a long time coming, one of the major arteries, which is in a relatively small geographic area, is the road, or the roads, technically, going around the Queen's Park Savannah. The fact that that is not necessarily secure is an issue, not only because of the importance of the artery. I mean, could you imagine if you had a crime scene on one leg of the Queen's Park Savannah and it impacted traffic? That will cause the entire capital to be in a mess. And potentially will cut off certain parts of the country, just saying, right? Or at least make it extremely difficult for citizens to travel. Because it's a crime scene, you can't just brush it aside and let the cars go through. But also, let's not forget, in theory, the Prime Minister's residence and the President's residence are accessed via the Queen's Park Savannah. And there's very little alternative vehicular routes to do so. I think there's technically maybe one, and it's one of the most inconvenient alternatives that you could ever consider. So there's a report that there's more of a police presence around the Queen's Park Savannah. Right? I mean, the minister says it himself, Minister of Homeland Security. The incident at the Queen's Park Savannah is one of great concern, particularly as it occurred in a highly and heavy trafficked family space. Yes, very true. And it was done in the presence of a child. Additional foot, mobile, and intelligence-led patrols will be focused. I don't know what intelligence-led patrols mean, but will be focused on that particular area. Homicide Bureau of Investigations is also pursuing leads. they got information, intelligence, and evidence that can assist in the matter going forward. I mean, that's one of those questions that we have. The motives as to why. We got a comment. I'll save that in a bit. I'll save that for after the break. If we go into that topic. And that's just one strategic artery, right? You also have the Ministry of Health, like right there. You have a lot of schools utilizing the Queen's Park Savannah for parents to go to and from those locations. A lot of schools just around that eastern stretch there, right? Just before and just after the Ministry of Health and Port of Spain in general, in around that area. You have Napa. There's a lot with regards to the Queen's Park Savannah. You technically have, well, at this point, you could say the American Embassy old facility, amongst other things, right? And you also, and this might be something that a lot of the big shots don't necessarily want to advertise, you have a lot of big-time, high-end functions at the Magnificent Seven. So, to say that crime is allowed to happen there, not that I'm saying crime should be kept, you know, we should just put a barricade or a wall so that crime only happens in the hotspot areas. And there's quite a lot with regards to East Port of Spain and east of Port of Spain. But at the same time, if you allowed it to spill out unfettered, it will just encourage crime to expand and grow. One of the things, though, is to consider, because it sounds bad when you say contain crime. But I understand there's a certain amount of irony here. I'm approving of, okay, more presence around the Savannah. But I've also said it's not as though there's enough police to go on every corner, etc., etc., etc. So by putting more police here, potentially police presence somewhere else was reduced. Now, to what extent is that going to have a negative consequence? Now, senators are split on the death penalty, or have very interesting opinions on them. Quite a lot of people call for the death penalty to be reinstated. But let me finish a point that I was making earlier, and then we'll take a break. The criminals might not necessarily care about being locked up. The criminals also might not care about being executed. Now, maybe it's one thing to have bravado when you're in your hotspot and you're in essentially a gang war zone or an area that is contested between two or more criminal gangs, right? Because in that situation, your bravado is in part, you feel you can fight your way out of those situations. Now, history has proven that in any of those fights, there's a winner and a loser, so you have very roughly a 50-50 chance. And criminals basically bet on themselves, and half of them lose. Statistically, that's what happens. Half of you lose every time there's a gang war, unless somehow both sides manage to escape without getting hurt. Now, it's a different thing when you are arrested in the custody of the state and you just have this execution looming. But on some level, psychologically, it's not that I think that our criminals do not fear death and do not fear being arrested and incarcerated. It's that I think the culture is to have the bravado and to act as though you are unafraid. And one of the interesting things is the old adage of a bully, you just hit the bully and then he'll crumble. That didn't really exist when I was going to school. You didn't just hit the bully and he would run away scared. No, you potentially have to stand up to bullies, and they're not necessarily going to run away scared. You just have to stand up to them. And whatever happens after that happens that. Because at times, it's not just about, it's about the image that you're projecting, and you're willing to commit to that image, even to your detriment. Because there seems to be a disconnect of understanding what consequence is until you reach the point of no return, until it's staring you in the face. And if some of them will be so defiant, they will not care. So the two consequences we have on the books, I understand now there's, in this article here in The Guardian, they're essentially presenting from the senators a debate, informal conversation on the validity of the death penalty. But my concern is, do we actually have consequences that in and of themselves are really affecting criminal activity? And I would say no. In part because the criminals, I believe, have psyched themselves up to act as though they don't care, even if it does concern them. But more importantly, the reason why they could get away with it is due to the fact, going back to an earlier point, a significant majority of them do not actually experience consequences from the law. I mean, that's one of the implications of the phrase gangsters killing gangsters. Gangsters killing gangsters means, well, we can't actually stop them from committing crimes. We're more than happy for them to kill each other. Now, it's one thing for the population to say that. It's another thing for police to say that. And that might not be the intention behind the statement, but that's the implication. They're probably more concerned about gangsters, other gangsters coming after them than the police. Because statistically, the detection rates aren't good enough. So, what's the point of fearing the law if most of you are not going to feel the real, true brunt of the law? The sloppy ones will end up in a gunfight against the police. But we can't depend on them to be sloppy. The sloppy ones also will end up being killed by their enemies in criminal underworld, or the unlucky. But again, we can't depend on that to solve our problems. What are we going to do about this? I'll say this, there's no silver bullet, there's no quick fix, there's no one-size-fits-all answer or solution, but rather something that requires a foundation to be built brick by brick, multifaceted, social programs, law enforcement programs, and that includes dealing with the deficiencies in the criminal justice system. Because all of the rigmarole that we've heard with regards to anti-crime from the government, the situation with Stand Your Ground is stalled, the situation with fixing the prison service, we're not hearing squat about that. Trust and confidence in the police, okay, maybe it's on the upswing, but to what extent might it be capped? Hopefully we don't have a controversial police action anytime soon, because that will just undermine everything. We're not really seeing a lot of leadership coming from the government with regards to the fight against crime. Because a government has certain functions, and we are technically not seeing the functions of the government. One minister involved is not the government. A state of emergency is not the only thing for a government to do in a fight against crime. But maybe we'll get to that after the break. Stay tuned. Let's talk about the WSN. Sean Michael Small will be right back after this.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
In this day of stay at home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
And we're back here and talking about the WSND Content Capital, and I can't ignore everything that happened with regards to this issue, but it seems to stem from the committee that was aborted, given the fact that one of the members of the committee was involved, or at least was shown to have edited in some way. I'm not sure what she edited because it was redacted. Documents of one of the witnesses to provide testimony to said committee. And that is viewed as improper, and I can understand why that is viewed as improper, right? You are there as part of the committee, this person is there to testify to the committee. Probably not a good idea to be involved with prep. Now, the thing is, to what extent is the motives behind that in bad faith, or is it just a technical function? I don't know, right? I know Janelle. I am willing to defend Janelle. I am willing to say that while I try not to have any bias for any organization or entity or ideology or any sort of financial considerations, anything like that, I'll have a little bit of personal bias like any other human, right? I have yet to see anything that says, ooh, smoking gun, bam. Now, the situation, which is one that I didn't necessarily want to speak of, because there are other considerations that I have had for other parliamentarians from both parties. This doesn't come up as much with the situation in Tobago, but it has maybe once or twice. But I have had considerations to not say certain things because my speculation is not necessarily based on the committee stuff. My speculation is based on the things around the committee stuff. But let's leave that alone. I'm going to leave that alone as much as possible. However, the wider topic at hand now, it has evolved and grew into a situation in Parliament where the opposition walked out. The opposition walked out because the debate, they believe, has been turned into deliberate abuse. One of the things is that the government has a motion, I believe, and this motion, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I don't know if it's proper, to be honest. A motion to revoke the appointment of Senators Janelle John Bates and Faris Awari. The problem is, right, I am not sure what the basis of this motion is. Is this normal parliamentary practice? Because it's one thing if, as far as I can recall, they technically didn't break any laws, right? Otherwise, then, if they did, why have they not been arrested? Although we have seen parliamentarians technically break the law with no police follow-up. But so without having an objective litmus test, I'm very, very concerned about the potential implication that a government who commands a majority can put forward any kind of motion to try to compel the opposition to do something like this on the basics of it, right? Again, I am not a lawyer or someone that knows the regulations and procedures of Parliament and the standing orders well enough to know how proper this is, but on its surface, in a not too dissimilar way, I would argue that people are looking at the situation. How could a member of the committee be involved in helping a witness prep testimony to said committee? I am just questioning, how could a government have the right to utilize its majority in Parliament to compel the opposition with regards to who should be senators appointed and who should not be appointed senator? That seems to be one of those things where, even if it's procedurally allowed, is one of those precedents that we dare not set recklessly. Because, and maybe now is a good time to take the comment. I don't know if you're ready for me. Let's listen to what this comment has to say. I must say, I'm really enjoying the Parliament. The PNM is getting exactly what the UNC got in the last 10 years in the Senate, a breath of fresh air. On another note, Senator Awari held Mrs. Bates' hand as a child and led her directly into that situation as a father teaching his child to do the wrong thing. That is the state of play, thanks. Now, the part that I wanted to get to is the PNM is getting exactly what the UNC got in the last 10 years. I have no problem with this. This proves the point that I was making just now. You want to set a precedent like this, just wait. No party is invincible. No party is in power forever. The PNM the complaint is they have been in power too much. But even they have not been in party forever, indefinitely. Even they have to face the fact that potentially what abuse they inflict upon the other side can be inflicted upon them. And yes, on some level, the conduct of the Speaker, the presiding officer, so in the case of the Senate, President of the Senate, but I believe this is in the House. This is a motion in the House, right? A lot of this is being played out in the House. But regardless, the conduct of Parliament from the government side with its informal influence over the presiding officer did not sit well with me during the previous administration. Here's the difference in perspectives. I didn't like what both sides did the last go around. I didn't like what both sides did And now that the tables have turned and both sides are kind of occupying the opposite role, that doesn't make me like it anymore. I like it just as I like it just as little, if not less. Because a lot of the people involved, they should have seen it from one perspective, the fact that everyone's willing to just flip the script. Because the commenter is saying he is enjoying the PNM getting their comeuppance. I am saying I didn't necessarily like it when the PNM did it. Why am I going to like it when the UNC does it? And from my public perspective, I believe that we have a parliament that has a greater majority, that has some amount of informal influence on the presiding officers. Because at times, it seems as though one can make the argument, one can speculate based on the video evidence that the leader of government business has undermined the Speaker of the House in a manner similar to a member of the opposition in the same moment. And that's just one instance. And others have pointed to the fact that they, in their opinion, believe the leader of government business has undermined the Speaker on more than one occasion. Forgive me, I don't necessarily want to see that. I know UNC supporters aren't going to see it that way. And that is technically, if you want to say that the PNM are getting what the UNC got in the last 10 years, then you are admitting that the UNC is conducting themselves in a manner that is not professional, not proper, and potentially not ethical. And I don't necessarily like the PNM's response either. Just like how I didn't like it when the UNC walked out. I thought there was a lot of grandstanding, a lot of dog and pony show, a lot of disingenuous outrage. Now, in this case, I think the outrage might be a little bit more genuine, but the practice and the results, or maybe not the results, but let me just say the practice, I don't appreciate. Because in both cases, you can make the case you're running away. Now, in the case of the then opposition leader Kamala Persad-Bissessar, now Prime Minister, that seems to be one of her stratagems in politics. They have successfully hidden a significant amount of their government transparency from the media. And in that is a inaccurate way of stating they aren't transparent at all. They are just as not transparent as the PNM, and in some ways more so, believe it or not. Maybe in some ways less. So I don't know what the net result is, but in some ways they are less transparent than the previous administration. You know, the administration that I complained about not being transparent for just about almost the entire time, maybe the last 3 years of Talking Point, when they were in office. Their last 3 years in office, I was complaining about PNM transparency, and now I am left here saying this government seems to be in some ways less transparent. I mean, this Prime Minister seems to be less present than the previous Prime Minister, and there were legitimate complaints about him not being present. Some of them made by this government, some of them members of this government, some of them made by the opposition leader who is now Prime Minister herself. It's very interesting. But I digress. The PNM is behind the 8 ball at the end of the day. Let's not try to fluff things in buzzwords and whatever and obfuscate the truth. They lost an election handedly. They were voted out, and somebody else came in because of it. And if there was a snappy election tomorrow, there should be no reasonable expectations that the PNM should win. They might gain ground, but it's only been a year. It's only been a year. Not enough has happened to just give you back the government by default. And the PNM as a party has not done enough to force the issue, to force a change in perspective, to generate a new narrative around themselves. And while I understand that it's a difficult situation, I fear one of the reasons why our parliamentarians like to run so much, because that's what the UNC did in opposition. They ran. For the most part, they ran. The motivations vary. I won't get into all of it. Why? Because then it goes into a lot of political soup. But they ran. And the opposition now ran. Because let's not do the hard thing. Let's not be in it for the long haul. Let's not fight the hard fight. Let's not do the right thing even though it's harder. Let's do the easy thing even though it's wrong. You want to prove to the population that you're ready to be government? Sit there or stand there, whichever one is required by parliamentary procedures. Sit there and take it. And don't fire back in the same manner. Don't descend along with the people that are more than happy to go to the gutter. Sit there, take it, be respectful, figure it out. Put on the adult pants if you want to claim to be the adults in the room. I can't get it how both sides want to claim to be, oh, we are so much better than the other side. And essentially, when push comes to shove, the temptation of responding in kind overwhelms them. It doesn't matter who starts the argument, who throws the insult first. The other side will invariably fire back in kind. And then say, how unprofessional are you, while responding in an unprofessional manner. And it sickens me. Now, I don't necessarily know if the PNM responded in any sort of bacchanalist way this time. Now I'm more about the walking out. They were kind of improving with regards to the messaging. But listen, you lost. You had to take your licks. And if the population sees you taking the licks, then they would say, hey, but they're made of stainless stuff. Hey, they're willing to wade in the fire, to stand there and be shot at, rhetorically speaking. Yes, it probably was, according to the PNM, it probably was some degree of deliberate abuse. You can't be a victim if you avoid it. I mean, that's a cynical way to put it across, but because on one hand, I mean, the government themselves kind of have this whole thing meandering all over the place. On one hand, you want to blame Senator Faris Awari. That is why I'm saying that he, Awari, threw Senator John Bates under the bus. When we look at the data, Ms. John Bates made 37 edits over a period of 25 minutes. Senator Awari made about 175 changes to that document over a 2-day period. So you understand who is really the guilty mind in this. Hold on, let's, this is Saddam Hussein. This is a quote. So you understand who is really the guilty mind in this. That is a young senator, but Senator Awari ought to know better. But then wants to go on and say, if she didn't get catch, you think she had integrity? Put back up the comment, if you can, please. You see that last part there? That is one interpretation. And all I'll say is this. There's at least one other interpretation. And before anybody says anything, that perspective that I'm applying to say there's another interpretation here in this case, I've applied in UNC situations before, right? But for similar reasons, I'm not going to get into my opinions from those perspectives. Maybe at some point I will, when enough time has passed, and I could speak generally about those examples, and it will not affect anybody. And I don't have a lot of knowledge directly over these specifics, but I'm going off on what I've observed, what little I have observed in the inner workings, which is very not directly tied to anything, right? And what little I know, which again, I don't know anything about the situation at hand, but most members of the public don't either. Everyone's entitled to have an opinion. My opinion comes from a perspective that is very different to that. It may or may not be similar to one of Saddam Hussein's slightly contradicting opinions on the matter. So, of course, one of the things is they don't, Faris Awari is untouchable, blah, 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 blah. Why hasn't they accepted the resignation by Senator John Bates? But my issue with all of this is we have had parliamentarians from before, both sides, do a lot of nonsense, a lot more nonsense. It never became this big. That's point number one. Point number two, both sides, this is not a good look. It's just not. Right? For different reasons, some which, like I said before, I won't say. Right? But point number three, no offense to the government. We said this to the PNM. You could blame the PNM for what you were left with. But at the end of the day, there's a limit to how far this should go. Or at least there's a limit to how far you should drive it. Similar to how you should never rate yourself, you should also limit the extent that you go after your opponents. Now, if there was a law that was broken, that's different. But you will always be viewed as biased against. So any sort of opinion on informal things doesn't have enough weight and can hurt the perception that your non-supporters have of you if you take it too far. More importantly, and this is something that we've seen from the previous administration, and I guess you could say we are seeing it now. When the rubber meets the road, what Senator John Bates did or did not do will not excuse your performance metrics. There was something telling with regards to the people that had a positive thing to say about the government in the newspaper 1 year in. They said, she's doing good. She hasn't done anything, but we don't expect her to be able to do anything in a year. I'm sorry, that's not how it works. There are things you can accomplish within a year. There are things that they are claiming to have accomplished in a year. Some of those things initiated by the PNM, by the way. But the point is, even their supporters have identified the fact that the government, in their opinion, didn't accomplish much, if anything at all, in their first year in office. Notice, when they respond to the opposition, it's not in defense of their policies. It's not justification of their policies based on evidence and logic and reasoning. It's, we don't want to hear from you because you're PNM and PNM did this, which technically is not a viable point to make or counterpoint to make in a debate over an issue. The PNM paid the price of their inadequacies already. There is no utility to the population for their failings the previous time in office to be re-adjudicated. It already was resolved. They lost an election. Now, the government wants to use that as ammunition in order to justify its failings, or rather, distract. Because we can't actually stand on our own merits. We're only good in comparison to the bad PNM that was. So we have to continue harping on that. We can't actually defend ourselves on the merits of our own accomplishments. That's how this comes across from the government. And before anyone accuses me of any sort of bias, and to reiterate the point, the PNM, they're not ready yet. They haven't shown us that they've turned it around yet. They started to in some aspects, but if you want to be better than, you can't be the same as. You can't. Don't complain about the government and then do the same things, just in reverse, or do the things that they did when they were in opposition unknowingly. But hey, most people will do the easy thing. Most people will take the shortcuts from the police leadership to the budget and I guess to the Prime Minister. And both parties are more alike than they think, and their supporters think. Because they essentially, when you really look at it on a technical level, commit similar mistakes in similar ways, even after seeing how it failed when the other side did it. It's amazing to me. But more importantly, regardless of my political beliefs or ideological beliefs, do I enjoy it? Think about what you're saying. You're hoping that the government's winning means that the country's winning. Parliament looking like that cannot be the country winning. Cannot. They have a majority. They have a significantly bigger majority, and they still can't make Parliament look better? We have a long way to grow. We have a long way to go and a long way to grow. Let's take a break. The SP is here joining us via Zoom, but we'll see him after this. Stay tuned.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way, or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
Are you driven, ambitious, and ready to earn? WESN, the Content Capital, is expanding, and we're looking for dynamic media sales executives to join our team. Sell powerful advertising solutions across television, digital, and social media platforms, and help brands tell their story. If you have strong communication skills, a passion for sales, and the drive to succeed, join WESN today. Send your CV to marketing@wsncc.com or WhatsApp 6861662 and start building your future.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
And we're back here on Talking About WESN, and joining us virtually once again. We are grateful to have him because there are always things that the police service needs to get out to the public, and to do so we have our media ambassador. Good to see him as well, just to see the man himself, ASP, Acting ASP Christopher Rowan. Chris, morning, welcome back to Talking About.
Hi, morning, Sean. Thanks for having me. Thanks. I hope you and your staff having a great day. I just got up. I came in 3 o'clock this morning, so.
My thing, Chris, here's the thing, Here's the thing. I understand if a police officer works that hard. I just have a question. Why are you having to work that hard? All things considered with regard to the fact that you've already overworked yourself, right? Too much. And I'll leave it there. The fact that you still have to do it.
No, I like to work. So we have the first division officers have a responsibility to do visits. So our visits involve going to stations and posts and making sure that the officers are there, they're working, the compound is safe, all the arms and ammunition are in the safe and accounted for. So it bewildered me that something like this can happen in South, but nonetheless, so I visited Blanchisseuse police station last night and Maracas Bay. And there's a big crowd in Maracas before midnight. It subsided by midnight. And the Blanchisseuse station, very nice and quiet. The officers were on patrol at midnight. That was good, Corporal George. And we had the army as well up there.
Right.
Defense force on patrol, which was good. And it's part of the duties as a first division officer and as a senior officer. It happens once, twice for the month. So it's our share of our work, or the work that needs to be done. So we break it up amongst ourselves and we make sure and have it done. So that's me. It's other first division officers, and I love to work. I love to be out there as opposed to inside. And recently, like Wednesday, I had High Court last week, And Wednesday, I had caused to arrest a man with a cutlass. He was running down some school kids.
Oh.
Yeah, and a lady saw him way up the road. And thankfully, you know, we always say, see something, say something. And thankfully, she saw us.
Yes.
And we were able to apprehend him. And it was about 8 kids. Yeah, 8 kids.
Y'all apprehended him alive. It didn't come to any violence, right? Because there was a high-profile shooting in New York in a similar situation, a man with a cutlass. And I think he might have either he wanted suicide by cop, or he was crazy, or he was on some sort of psychedelics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thankfully, we in using the use of force policy, he did not drop the weapon as ordered by the officers and myself. But I was in the back seat, so the officers in the front took front.
Mm-hmm.
And they ordered him to drop the cutlass. And he didn't drop the cutlass at all. In fact, but we had to subdue him, of course. And when we subdued him, we relieved him of the cutlass. We seized it, and we arrested him.
Y'all approached him, or?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, listen, the fact...
We had to intervene. We had to use the police vehicle to drive between him and the children.
Listen, kudos, just the fact that y'all were willing to approach him. He's not dropping the cutlass. Because the situation in New York was, the guy started to... They spent a long time apparently trying to talk him down, and then towards the end, he made a move towards the police and they shot him. And I'm
but
like,
I mean, if it had reached to that, thankfully it didn't. But it didn't reach to that. So thankfully he eventually listened to the orders of myself and the other officers, and he lay down with the cutlass.
Okay.
And that's how we took it away. So you know, but if he had advanced. Because he was actually next to the driver, our driver.
Right.
So if he had advanced, there was no time.
Right.
There was no time to react, except to probably do what we would have had to do. And thankfully, you know, we didn't have to reach that stage, and thankfully the children were safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were traumatized. I must admit, they were very traumatized. We had to call in the parents. Because we don't release children to the traveling public and whatnot. You know, you have to come and pick up your kids and whatnot. And they are victims, of course. And we were able to treat them, you know, we got an unmarked vehicle and we took them to the station. And we were able to resolve the issue then.
Well, I mean, folks, let me put it this way. You could tell the officers that do it. I'm just saying. But this all stemmed from you ironically asking us how our day was going, or asking if we were having a good day here at the station. Well, I mean, for us normal waking people, it's Monday. Monday's never the best day. You know, you had so much excitement yesterday or the day before or whatever this happened. But for us normal waking people, it's a Monday. You know, we're right back to the doldrums. And for me, it's having to reconnect with what's going on in the country. And to some extent the world. I mean, the international news, I technically, I get those channels are always on, you know, for better or worse. But you're actually here to speak about something which is very pertinent again to one of the news items that happened over the weekend. And it's the situation with home invasions, which I guess home invasions are in a weird spot where crime is technically down and violent crime and murders are technically down, but the threat of home invasion still persists.
So what you have with home invasions, of course, is a crime of opportunity. 1, it's also gang related. 2, 3, it's also a planned, organized, executed criminal activity by persons, unfortunately, in society. And what we saw persons from the community, apparently, whether it planned or as a crime opportunity, enter somebody's premises. Now, what we want the members of the public to understand is, just as all the issues we ever spoke about is about awareness and reasonable, responsible the method at which they deal with the situation.
Right.
So they must be reasonable and responsible in how they address the criminal activities perpetrated against them. And I mean, at times you might feel, look, the best thing to do is execute the worst case scenario response, which is not always the best decision. But you still have to be responsible and you still have to be aware of your surroundings. So in terms of homeowners, we're talking about home invasion. So you saw the home invasion unit, I believe that's what they call the home invasion unit, responding to a report or information of a home invasion. And we saw 4 persons unfortunately losing their lives. Condolences to their family, of course, and their loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's never an easy thing when somebody loses their life for material gain. And it's not like somebody went to save somebody's life and they got killed. It's not like somebody was in an accident or somebody was sick. This is persons losing their lives for material gain, or allegedly. And we hope that that there could be an amicable resolve to the issue. And I hope the family and the friends and the relatives find some closure in this matter. Nonetheless, homeowners also they also have a responsibility to, as I said, act reasonably in keeping with the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. So you have target hardening. We spoke about this already, where you use burglar proofing to secure your property, fences. You have lights. You have lights. You might have automatic lights. You might have proper lighting on at all times. All these are methods of target hardening to make yourself less of a target to perpetrators and offenders out there. You have the avenue of laws like the Trespass Act, the Indictable Offences Act, the Summary Offences Act as well. So that if it is somebody trespasses on your property or enters your property, you have the right to tell them to leave. Right? You have the right to tell them to leave. You have the right to call the police. Mm-hmm. And you also have the right to apprehend persons who might commit an arrestable offense in your property. So they might come, it's called a citizen's arrest. So they may come in and they may commit an offense like burglary or larceny or theft, we call it larceny. They are entitled to be arrested if they commit offenses, any offense, wounding, assault, any kind of offense. You have the authority to arrest them and call the police. You have the authority if somebody enters your property, it's a private property, whether it be a shop or parlor, whatever is a private property. And you ask them to leave and they refuse, you call the police and the police can come and eject them. Right? You have now you have the I think it's what they call it now, the stand your ground laws.
Yeah.
Where you have the right now to eject persons yourselves, and you have the right to protect yourself, and if need be, use the force equal to the force being perpetrated against you. Well, so you have the right to fight back.
Well, I want to go back to target hardening first, and then I'll get to the fighting back part, because I think part of it too is, look, if you don't have your doors locked, if the back door is open, if everyone knows that your house is basically, because it's targets of opportunity, but it's not like they drive down the street, they see an opportunity and they go down. No, it's opportunity sense of they figure out who's more vulnerable, what house is easier to break into. And if the house is too easy to break into, well, then the police could try their best. But if they're in and out like that, there's no way for you guys to respond in time. If it's easy to just get in and take whatever and get out.
Right. So and then you have the locations. So the locations are mostly rural. So you have a lot of rural locations that the police don't primarily patrol or could respond within seconds or minutes. It will take them some time. So you have this entire country where you have a lot of rural areas, and then you have the police coming from a particular location, and they may patrol at times, but then the response is needed. So what they look at, they also pay counter to civilians and the police, and they are aware how long it will take the officers to respond, right? So then you have a situation where the police might patrol what we will be deemed populated areas, And, you know, we want to reduce the sense of security. So let me say, for instance, you know, Belmont Circular Road, right?
Yeah.
You would want, because of the amount of persons traveling through, let me say, Belmont Circular Road, it's a built-up community. It has a lot of traffic.
Yes.
A lot of schools.
Yes.
It has a number of persons conducting business along that roadway, and it's a pretty large roadway. And so what you have is, so if we were to put patrol there 24/7, or at least during peak hours, that same patrol will not be very available to go into Hermitage Road or a far off road in Belmont like Gonzales. Yeah. And in Gonzales, you may have more crime. So we tend to send the operational units like the task force and whatnot, IATF, into those areas. But what we want, because we want to reduce the sense of the sense of crime in a community, we would have the patrol stay in Belmont Circular Road, where there's a lot more persons who would benefit from the police patrol in that community, as opposed to a far-off location.
Yeah,
so then
that's
where the target is.
Consider this too, because we're not giving out secrets. The criminals know, right? The criminals know where police response geographically, it's going to take longer than the heart of the city, right? But people also need to consider this. If you want to live in these remote areas, I think also too, one of the reasons why it's impractical to leave police by you, because, well, why don't you just leave the patrol here so you can respond in case anything happens by me? Well, the reverse is also true. If your area is remote and the police are there, if anything happens somewhere else, it'll take long for the police to leave that area to go wherever somewhere else is. So it's a catch-22, and again, we can never have infinite police to say we're going to put a police in every spot.
So what you would want to do in like remote areas. So if we say let's say your poor of means, so you can't afford burglar proofing, and you can't afford to secure your property and whatnot, because these are the persons they target. So you, in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. in the morning, you're in your home. You're living in a very humble property, and they would break in, and they come to thief, they come to rob, they come to kill. Let's talk basic. I mean, I hope I don't offend anybody by using those words, but this is what the criminal element is coming to do. So you have the organized ones that would target persons who have money. So they just took out $50,000 from the bank, and for some reason they know this. I don't know why. And you know you have it home, so they target you, and they have a home invasion at your house, hoping to get. So you have the targeted ones where they believe or they know that you have cash, jewelry, valuables that they are sure that you have there, or they strongly believe you have it there. And then you have the homes where these persons of poor means may not have anything at all. And because some of these criminal elements are not the best thinking persons, they target who they feel they want to target, who are very vulnerable. And these are poor people to target into, and they break in your house, and they come, as I said, to rob and thief, right? And the easiest thing you could do in a community that is rural and whatnot is to have a neighborhood watch, right? We have a lot of people on social media. A lot of people who have ill means are on social media, and they are able to communicate well on social media, I mean, WhatsApp and whatnot. And this is one of the simplest things you could do in your community, is have a neighborhood watch. And you don't have to have any persons you don't talk to, because we know how neighbors can be. But I am sure there are persons you speak to. Because where I live, I didn't originally grow up here and whatnot, but I speak to everybody on the street. I stop and I talk to everybody, and we have a very good relationship. And any issues in the community, they come to me and they say, well, you know, officer, so and so is the case. We have 7 kids on the block and we wanted to assist with that and whatnot. And we come and we bring in community police and whatnot. But nonetheless, that's a police officer's responsibility. Nonetheless, you're living in a community. The easiest thing you can have, you look out for each other. You have a community watch. If something happens, you can alert persons in the community. You have your lights on as much as possible. And to take that that element of surprise away from these perpetrators, right? You may have your weapons with you, legal and lawful weapons, and to protect yourselves. And you have the option, as soon as something happens, you could call the police 999. In fact, when sadly, and I think something we have to work on with the TTPS is that when the incident took place with the Cutlass, no, sorry, I was in an accident the week before, and with the police vehicle, but the vehicle wasn't damaged, and two vehicles, the road was wet, so the road conditions were poor. Apparently, it had gravel. A truck had just spun around, and the person behind us applied brakes too quickly, and they hit each other. And I tried calling 999 for them to respond, and the 999 actually was busy. So we had to assist and call the station there and get officers to respond. So nonetheless, as much as possible, hopefully we could improve on that 999 system. And you call 999 and you make a report. If you have your local station number, that would be even better. And you call and they would send a response team to that location. Because there's a delay in communication when you call 999 and they have to call the station or the patrol. But the better thing with the 999, they are able to send out an APB at all points, alert and whatnot, and police coordinate.
Which could converge on the situation.
Yeah.
Now, remote areas, they have their complications, right? I think one of the things I wanted to mention is I understand people don't trust the banks. I think you have to do that cost-benefit analysis. Like, I'll say this, I don't know what Senator Nakin needed $10,000 in cash for, right? But, or what anybody wants to store large amounts of cash at home for. And one of the things is, look, if you have things to be robbed, you cannot just assume, I'll never know and they'll never rob me. I hate that whenever anybody tells me that.
Yeah.
And I guess if you're in a remote area, you have to weigh the pros and cons. I'm not going to try and have the most expensive TV and the most expensive car and have a safe of cash in my house, because at some point, I think they don't just, as you're pointing to, they're not thinking about who they know or who they have a reasonable, logical judgment to say they have a large amount of things to steal and valuables to steal and money to steal. They're just like, hey, that looks like an easy mark. We'll take what we could get. $200, whatever. And if you just luck out and be the unfortunate soul that, had $10,000 under your bed, $50,000 under your bed, $100,000 under your bed, they just randomly fished in locations. But that, I think on some level, that is just one of those things where I don't know if it's cultural, but it's something that people need to stop.
It is cultural. It is cultural, and we have to get away from that, because we have the people on the ground, the real Trinidad and Tobagonians who are on the ground, working very hard every day to make ends meet. And oftentimes they have bills to pay. So you might have somebody who's selling doubles, and they're working hard at selling the doubles, and they're making the money, and the lump sum sale at the end of the day might be a few $1,000s, right? But they have costs to cover.
Yes.
Right, so they have to pay off. Who have to pay off at the end of the day? They have to pay for the bara and the chana and the pepper sauce. They have to pay for the whoever. They have to pay the workers and whatnot. So at the end of the day, the profit might be minimal. At least I think so, but not least. And then you have the fishermen in the field, and they have the gardeners, and lump sum monies may come in, cash may come in, but they have to pay out.
But not just that. One might be very rich, but then the mistake would be, oh, well, doubles people make money. It's like, well, that doubles guy might make money, and that one might be breaking even. And if you rob from him, the harm you're doing is so much disproportionate, but of course, criminals are not going to care. And they're not going to know, and they're not going to care, to reiterate.
Yeah. But, so these are the persons. Yeah, so these are the persons on the ground who are the most targeted, and we want persons to, again, be aware. Change up your schedule. In cases of businesses, you have the option of hiring security to come in and take up your cash in transit, we call it, and they can collect your cash. And as you say, it's a cultural. I am also saying it's a cultural thing because I think it's, I don't know, maybe it stems from long ago where it was PIP, I guess, to have a lot of cash and disperse a lot of cash, I guess. I don't know. But hopefully we can get away from that, do a lot more online banking. I wish that Trinidadians could do a lot more because we see it in Africa. In Africa, one of the things that Africa would have done, I don't know almost the entire continent, I don't know what many nations in Africa would have done is go to a system where they use their mobile devices to transfer funds and credit.
That is definitely influence from China.
They were actually ahead of the entire world, right? I think Africa is over 1 billion people, and they were able to use a lot of online banking, phone device transfer funds and whatnot, and it minimized, and it was easier when you have, and especially when the currency may have been devalued a lot or in a little bit. They were able to do a lot more commerce, transfers and whatnot. And I think Trinidadians should look towards doing that. Have less cash. So at the end of the day, they have nothing to steal.
Yes.
They have nothing to target you for.
Yes.
Target you for a TV, they'll get $200-300 for the TV. TV might be worth about $5. TVs are coming down in sales. They steal a TV from your home. They're not going to be able to sell it for more than a few $100s. So it makes it less likely that they're going to target you. And but we have to change that perception. We have to change that culture in order for it to be widely accepted that people who have money in the house are.
It's not just one person to do it. It's what you said. You have to change the wider perception by, well, we robbed 3 houses and we got nothing. This isn't all of a sudden the math not matching. What we risking our necks for nothing. It don't make sense. Now,
like the taxi drivers, the maxi drivers. So you have a maxi driver.
Here's the thing, and I think this is the point that you were getting to, because I know in China you could pay people directly phone to phone, which means the maxis, the taxis, the doubles men, now they can go cashless with the wireless devices that they already have in their pockets. They don't need to get anything special like a link machine and all of that.
So we should look into that area, technology and whatnot. Hopefully we can see, but we were talking about target hardening. We were talking about making yourself less of a target. So your home, we were talking about your home.
I wanted to go to where you said about being responsible with use of force, because this is something that I think people do not fully understand and have not fully thought about. And we have talked about these things before, but I wanted to talk about them again because, first of all, I think when you are, as a private citizen, are looking to use your handgun to defend yourself, one of the things that they're probably not thinking about is it's all fine and dandy to shoot off bullets if you think you're justified. But you have, correct me if I'm wrong, you have some responsibility to know or to understand what is behind your target, where your bullet's going to go.
Because they call it background selection.
Right, because one of the issues of a gun is not just harming the person you're shooting at, but maybe unintentionally harming someone behind them. And in cities and stuff especially, you have situations where someone randomly gets killed, not because they were just there in the background.
So you would be susceptible again to investigation and to charges if it is you did not take all necessary precautions to prevent the loss of life beyond what was intended. So you were attacked, you use your weapon to defend yourself, and you would have shot. Let me say, to make it simple, you shoot at the perpetrator, but you shot so wildly that you shot, let me say, somebody on the outskirts of your vision and your target. You could be charged for manslaughter. So you have to take that into consideration.
Because when you're shooting at something close, right, a little bit of motion in the hand, you know, it might still be in vicinity of the target, but when you go to the maximum end of the range, a little bit of motion in the hand could be different shooting at one house to shooting at another house. Right?
Yeah, and then, so you want to be careful at all times because you might even shoot one of your loved ones who might be in the background, you know.
Right.
So you want to be very careful. You might even shoot yourself. And it has happened with police officers already, and they've been charged, I believe, for manslaughter and whatnot. So even
because of the backfield.
Yeah. So you have to, it's called background selection. You have to always take into consideration, and training is necessary. So at any point in time, anybody who has a lawful weapon, including especially a firearm, must undergo strenuous training. And at the end of the day, you have the option of also going privately to these ranges, to these firearm dealers, and they offer training. So you get better at it. At the end of the day, it's about protecting yourself and your family and even your community from these criminals.
Now, I don't know to what extent you have a perspective on this, but I found it interesting that last home invasion, the crew was 8 men. And and the thing that I took away from the one that was allegedly perpetrated against the neighbor or someone living in the community of the Prime Minister's residence was the fact that the crew that did it, it was 6 to 8 men. It was a lot. It wasn't 2 to 4 men.
Right.
Sometimes we hear 2 men attempted to break into a house and then they ran. Now, when it's 8 men deep, I feel like that's a whole different situation that now the population, you can't just recklessly say, I'm just going to start shooting or I'm going to fight back. Because the father in that home invasion, he said he wished he had a gun. And my concern is, well, you have one gun, it's one of you, it's 8 of them. Even if they don't get the drop on you, you know, I think you kind of said it before or alluded to the fact, you don't know which home invasion crew is trying to not kill at all and which ones are more than happy to commit violence, right? And you now engaging, they might run or they might retaliate. I don't know what advice the police service has in cases like that, because that is a very difficult situation. Because before we used to say conform and survive, and now it's more like conform and flip the coin to see if you survive. So it's putting civilians in a really a tough bind.
Yeah, you still have to follow the rules of engagement.
Mm-hmm.
If you are attacked by 8 persons, then you have. It sounds like you have to use as much force as necessary to protect yourself and your family and your property. So if it does come down to deadly force, well then you have no other choice but to use deadly force. It seems that it is telling when you see 8 persons, 8 young persons enter a premises, it's telling something that society is not catering to the situation that these 8 persons, or is it that these 8 persons find it necessary to be involved? It appears to be alleged gang activity when 8 persons should come together to try to invade a home, and it is telling because, and especially young persons. So we don't have 8 persons for which were working and for which decided to turn to a life of crime. We have 8 persons who, for some reason, in our community decided we want to perpetrate crimes against other members of the community. So it's telling that, and as you say, it happened somewhere else near the Prime Minister residence with about 6 or 8 persons.
Yeah, something like that.
So it seems to be a pattern now. So it seems to be a trend in crime. So what, and that's the thing, the police are asked not just to fight crime, but to come up with solutions to address crime. And so then is it that we need to have more community outreach to assist our young people in the community to turn away from the life of crime, more than what we are doing now? So you understand? So that's how police responding. You have police sitting thinking, well, look, what can we come up with to assist members of this community, especially young person, to turn away from a life of crime? So it's telling.
Well, believe it or not, I think it comes full circle. 8 men, you trying to fight off 8 men, and you might be the one male adult in the house. Maybe you have a teenage son. Maybe you have a young adult son. The odds are not good. But ironically, things like burglar proofing and cameras and lights, 8 men doesn't make those things less effective. 8 men makes your ability to fight back less effective. But the target hardening that you pointed to, part of it is, if you could afford it, it buys you time. It can buy you time for the police. And I think part of it is, and I didn't necessarily say it directly, but I intended to, if you make the process slower, if you bog down the home invaders, first they have to break into the front gate on your porch.
Maybe you have canines, you might have dogs in the yard.
You might have dogs. You might have a gate to your porch, then a gate on your door, then your door itself, then a door inside your house, and then behind that, you have your handgun, your 3 magazines, your 30-something rounds, right?
Yeah.
You don't just fire off all 30-something rounds in 10 seconds.
No, and you're not allowed to fire off warning shots.
You're not allowed to fire warning shots.
No.
Right. So you judiciously stand your ground, not to stand your ground to fight, but to stand your ground just to hold them off. You stall them with all of the things. You also have your lights and your cameras, so their presence is exposed to the neighbors, to your camera system, and you buy the police time to respond. The crews have an awareness. No, this is not good math.
Right. So in this case, you had the homeowner alerted the police, I believe, and his neighbors, and the police were able to respond. Unfortunately, the end wasn't. Well, the end caused the demise of 4 persons, but nonetheless, they were able to respond in a timely manner. And I think I saw burglar proofing when I looked at the video. I saw burglar proofing, which was good. And they were trying to break in or something like that, allegedly. And but the most important thing is that the response of the police was reasonable, was quick, and that persons were able to communicate with the police in a timely manner. So as you say, to bog them down, to slow them down, make yourself less of a target, and they were able to call the police, and the police were able to respond in a timely manner.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to get to, because I thought about this when you said you were patrolling, you went to visit the Blanchisseuse police station, and I believe you said the regiment was up there. Like, just an observation, that is, I think, especially if you want to say you want the defense force involved to help the police, especially the remote areas, because one would think the military, out in the field, that should be their thing. The urban environment, that should be the police's thing, right? You all are better equipped to not over-penetrate with your firearms into buildings, and they technically are better trained to deal with, okay, we off the beaten path now, we in the bush, right? You as a gang member want to play tag with regiment soldiers in the bush, good luck with that. That's all up to you.
Yeah, it was nice. The community felt safe. To me, being an outsider, the community felt very safe. I could just imagine I was telling the driver, myself and the driver had gone up. My very good colleague, and when we were up there, the community felt so comfortable. It was safe, although it was almost pitch black. You have the street lights, you have homes had lights. There was nobody in and around except the little canine, the little potholes, and they were making a mess of the place. And you had the police was still out there. We saw one pedestrian. I don't know why this young lady saw it fit to be walking the road at that hour of the night. And we made sure she was just moving from one location to the next, very short distance away.
Right.
And but nonetheless, the community did feel safe. It did feel safe. It was good to see the police on patrol. The corporal, Corporal George, was on patrol with her colleague Matamora, and the army. And there was very little traffic. Very little traffic.
Right.
So now while you would see a car pass, and it was quiet, it was very nice. And then we went back to Maracas. We had to visit Maracas Bay Police Station as well. And there was a big crowd earlier. And there was also a patrol outside. And then the police, to deal with the crowd, the establishment, everybody knows the establishment, would hire off-duty cops. they call it extra duty, to take care of the crowd, which was good. And by midnight, the crowd had dispersed. So there's just one or two stragglers, and there was a police patrol outside, paying attention to the community outside, to the persons outside, which was very good. I applauded the corporal about that. And then we also had our sentries inside, the compound sentry and whatnot. And again, that community felt very safe. There wasn't, you would think this was the opportune time for criminal elements to be outside. Very safe. It felt very safe.
Well, and, go ahead.
And yeah, so then if it is that there was a home invasion in that community, or there was some element of crime or activity taking place, the police would have been able to respond very quickly. And the distance at that time of the night, there be no traffic. We were in and out of Blanchishes within an hour and a half. So that was good.
One of the things you brought up is how dark it was except for the street lights. Now, one of the things I want to say on extension that as part of the target hardening, because a lot of people are like, why do I need to put in lights? Well, first of all, if you're if you live in a remote area, even more reason for you to have lights around, for your community.
Yeah.
But,
and that was
but also
that has always been an issue that I would have identified, because especially when I was in Central, oh my God, we would get reports in the middle of the night, and we would be going out on reports, whether it be a break-in or a home invasion, or even a suspect, what they call man on premises. The offense is man on premises. So, like a suspect in your community, somebody on your property. And even the house we're looking for would have no lights on.
Yes.
So maybe it's a cultural thing, I don't know.
Well,
and they would not have lights on, and so you call the police, you have no lights on, you have a car, you have a $80,000 car under your house with no lights on, you have no gate, and somebody is on your property, and the police looking for you, and we cannot find you because you're not outside looking for us. You want us to find you by some miracle, and then you have no lights on to help us indicate, well, look, this is where the car was that the man was interfering with, so that we could know is that something. This is the home. So I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but
I also wanted to point out that I've noticed both in areas around where I live and say areas around the Woodbrook area, around Arapita Avenue, at night some of the street lights don't work. And
yes.
And this is where now you having lights around your home and your neighbors having lights will make a difference, because some of those areas now, because we just want to park, so if you can't get a park on the avenue, you look to a side street. Some of the street lights not working on the side street. So now it's like, do we want to park here? There's not a lot of activity here, and it's dark, But that's one thing. That's one thing if you're just looking for a park in an area close to commercial activity. It's another thing of where you live. And I think, I understand the government's supposed to fix street lights and stuff, but look, let's not get into that debate. It happens. A street light doesn't get fixed for a while.
Yeah. No, but that Maracas Road, Sean, definitely needs a lot more street lights. I'm talking about from the pillars straight to Blanchishes. It needs a lot more street lights because it's really dark. We had to put on the police lights.
Right.
Just there's some one persons coming because they were driving pretty wide into the road, and then you have these corners, and I don't think they were seeing our headlights properly, so we had to put on the blue lights to ensure that persons slow down. They were taking some pretty good chances, so we needed them to slow down and be aware. Well, look,
when they take a corner,
there's oncoming traffic, and I think what would have helped is the street now. There's these things that they put on the street that highlights the edges of the road. That was pretty
reflectors.
Good. But reflectors. Sorry, but it needs. I don't know who in authority could deal with that, but it needs street lights.
But here's the thing, though. I find sometimes when there's street lights on, it's harder to notice vehicular lights. Now, usually when it's a blind corner, I've never been in a situation where if their lights are on, I don't notice the lights. So I can't say for certain how accurate this is or not. But I also notice the fact that at times car lights seem to be getting brighter, and I do wonder if we've run into the problem, street lights or not, where my lights are so bright, I'm not going to notice anybody else's lights.
Yes, yeah. Those lights, I'm surprised that apparently they are lawful, because although the Motor Vehicle and Traffic Act speaks to the color of the lights that you're supposed to have on your vehicle, apparently now it's allowed licensing registers the vehicle with those lights, so apparently it's lawful.
The thing is, to me, it seems like they have high beams on, and there was one situation where I thought someone had their high beams in my eyes, so I put my high beams on to be like, to take off your high beams. No, you turn this high beams on after that. I'm like, oh, your lights are just obnoxious either way, right? Like, so I don't know to what extent that, ironically, we don't necessarily think about it, right? How those kinds of changes could then impact things like road safety on a road like Maracas.
Yeah, it may help. I'm just saying, but because
I'm concerned that it might be detrimental. If
okay. Because last week Friday we were coming up from the east, and when we were around Piaco area. We observed on the highway, it was night, it was around 7 o'clock in the night, and we were heading west, and we observed a maxi taxi on the slow lane, the furthest left lane.
Right.
Overtake or go onto the shoulder. And
to overtake.
we decided to intercept the vehicle, so we put on the blue lights and the siren. And we headed towards the maxi. And on pass, then we realized the maxi avoided hitting our vehicle. And the reason for that is because apparently the tail lights of that vehicle weren't working. So the maxi had so the maxi, even though there were street lights along that roadway, the maxi did not see the car and avoided hitting the car by taking an immediate left, because we were concerned about his driving. We were like, why is he doing that? And we were a good distance away, probably half a kilometer. And we were like, why is he driving so erratically? And we decided to intercept him. But only on passing that vehicle without lights, we realized, oh, that vehicle didn't have lights on. So we pulled him over. And he's a young man, and he didn't have one. It's not that he didn't have one tail lights. Tail lights weren't working. So we had to let him put on his blinkers, what I call it?
Hazard lights.
Hazard lights. And stay on the slow lane.
Yeah.
So he said apparently there was an electrical problem and his bulbs blew. So we sent him on his way, but we had to have him put on his hazard lights and things. So in that case, yes. So although there was street lights, the maxi, we recognized the maxi didn't see him in that time.
Yeah. All right, we're over time, so we'll have to end it there. But glad to hear from you again. Glad to hear about another instance this weekend where the TTPS did some good work. Not always bad news, guys. I will highlight all the good news if they send it to me. So maybe that's something you could tell your boss, like, get all the good news with the media ambassadors, so that, y'all can have the topic of conversation that y'all want to get out there. But also, hey, what went well this weekend or this week or last week with the police? Right. Just say it. It's good to
well, no, they do highlight it on the social media pages like Facebook.
But you have media ambassadors.
Right. So so I guess I'll have them send it to us and we'll send it to you.
Just a suggestion, just a suggestion.
Yeah. No, but we do a lot of pretty good work, especially with the arrests and the charges and whatnot, because that case we had last week, the High Court case, that was a really big case, and I can't talk about it because it's still before the court.
Yes.
But that was a 2019 matter. So you're seeing these vintage matters coming up now, but the police have always been working. They have always been charging people. So you have a lot of arrests, you have a lot of charges, you have a lot of court matters, but the police submission, although we could do better, the police service has been doing their job. They have been doing their job, and they've been bringing people before the court. They've been bringing persons to answer these allegations. What we need is probably, a better system. I'll just say it like that.
Part of it is transparency works both ways. It's not just about telling on yourself when bad things happen. It's also, hey, this is what we accomplished. Part of it is for the service themselves to get the recognition, the individual members, that the public could appreciate the good. But also part of it is for the public to kind of know, hey, it's not all bad. There's some good in there, right? Don't have low expectations because of one incident or because of one officer. Have reasonable expectations because other officers have shown, hey, I'm going to work myself to the bone till my health is in jeopardy, right? And I'm still going to work myself to the bone while my health is in jeopardy. And it is what it is. And I am speaking about Mr. Arun himself there, folks, right? Just to give him a little bit of recognition on that. He's probably not anywhere close to the only officer who does that, right? So that's why I always say, there are those officers who are working hard and sacrificing to keep everything running smoothly and keep everything together. And not just ASP Arun, but just about everybody who you worked with this weekend, probably you could lump them all into that category, right?
Yeah.
So, Chris, thanks a lot for joining me. I know you have to.
Yeah, well, I have to get to the office now.
Yeah. So, folks,
about our meetings. Yeah.
We will
Thanks very much, Sean.
Thanks, Chris. We'll end things there. This is talking about WSN Content Capital. Have a good day. Remember your leaders to the Republic and to each other. Stay safe. If you wanted to speak about anything I spoke about today or Chris spoke about, we'll open the phone lines. Feel free to bring it up tomorrow when we'll see each other. Bye-bye.
WESN